Now we're going to lower the lights. Can everybody hear me if I step away? If I step away, do you lose me? Because every now and then I walk away from this thing. I try not to. It was such a my habits. So Hydro Publishing Company presents Connecting the Dots of Humanity, Black History, PowerPoint Beginner Tutorial. This is the American year in America. We are celebrating the year 2008. In Africa, if you utilize the oldest calendar that came out of Africa, the year is 38,778. Now I want you to think about that one for a moment. You want to know how much information we're missing? We're missing almost 37,000 years of history. And this is a documented calendar. The fact that this calendar is going back almost 40,000 years means that it took years and years and years before that to study the stars, study the heavens, study the maps of geography and so on, astrology and so on and so forth, in order to come up with this kind of number. We in America know so little. I have a debate constantly with African historians who said that we really don't need to study African history. We have enough history in this country. And I like to tell them that I want the whole meal. You can have a cracker if you like it. I want the whole meal. For most African Americans, the notion of history begins with the lowest point of our existence as human beings. All humans have experienced the ebb and flow of time. All humans have played the role of slaves. And yes, we have all been kings and queens. This Black History presentation tells the rest of our story. And I want to talk a little bit about this situation here. One of the things, people ask often, well, what's going on with black people? Why can't you seem to get your stuff together? And nobody really understands or comprehends what slavery was. Slavery was much more than the notion of us working for free, us building and working in the fields and toiling from sun up to sundown, can't see for free. It was about mothers and fathers, sons and daughters being ripped from their homeland. There's a story, a compelling story in a book called In America, Africans in America. I think it was a PBS documentary as well. And in that story, on the first paragraph, first chapter, they talk about the story of Malawi. He was a young man who was captured by a tribe that was a warring tribe, and he remembers walking through the passages, the villages, on his way to the slave ships, being beaten. On the way, on that passage, on that trip, he saw his mother die. He saw his father react to what killed his mother, which was one of the other warring tribe members. And as his father reacted, he saw his father get his throat cut. So there on this trip, this 14-year-old kid, chained to his 18-year-old brother, saw his mother and his father die on the trip. And his journey was just beginning. That was just the beginning of what he went through, what he had to go through. So basically, by the time he got to the boat, he had to wait a while before they put him in a dungeon, and he stayed in that dungeon for a while. And what really got me was the fact that he spent many nights fighting the rats off of his brother because his 18-year-old brother died. And there they were, trapped on this boat. And as it rocked, the people got ill, and they threw up all over each other on the bottom, in the basement. If it was 100 degrees outside, it was 120 degrees in there. If it was 75 degrees outside, it was 50 degrees in there. No clothes. The only thing you have is an iron shackles cutting into your arms and legs. And here we see this young man chained to his brother who passed on. His brother was being trained to be a griot, a great historian, passed down all the family roots, all the trees, the roots of the trees of the village, so on and so forth. And his brother, before he started dying, started whispering to him, and he remembers having to sit upon his chest as his brother breathed his last breath. So by the time we got over here, we were already besides ourselves. If you recall the trauma this country went through at 9/11, that was one day of trauma. We went through 3 months of trauma on the boat, on this ship, on the way over here, not counting what took place on the homeland, not counting what took place in the dungeons before we ever left. So to understand the African American today, you must understand the antebellum South. You must understand the prior to. Carter G. Woodson, Negro History Week is started in his image, in his likeness. He came about this notion because he discovered the great things about great history about Africa and so on and so forth. He was ostracized by contemporary African Americans because of the fact that we were in such a condition of mind back in the 30s and 40s that the African Americans who were in the establishment thought that he might have us all ostracized and kicked aside by the white establishment for coming up with the notion that we actually want to put forth our history. Once again, there had been 200 or 300 years of program in effect, in place that said that we were inferior, and there was quite a machine to go up against those who in the African American community were very upset with him for having the notion to come across with something more than what we knew. He wrote a book called The Miseducation of the Negro. If you really want to understand African Americans, I highly recommend that book. And this is John Henry Clark. These are some of the people who are bringing you this information today. These are the people that me and Derek and the people in the Emoji Circle study. This is where we get our information from. He's mostly noted in the African Senate world for being Malcolm X's right-hand man. Whenever Malcolm had a lecture to give, he would go to, and he needs some more historical information, he would go to John Henry Clark. He became an ancestor about 8 years ago. And this is Ivan Van Sertima. What's significant about him is he wrote the book They Came Before Columbus. What's really significant about that is he showed that Africans had a relationship with people in Mexico, people in South and Central America that goes back almost 3,000 years. They said it couldn't, they said, once again, he came up against this machine that said that it wasn't possible, it wasn't true. So they went to Africa back in 1969. This is a boat built by African boatmen from Lake Chad. It's made of papyrus, which of course you know came out of Egypt. Like ancient boats of ancient, left North Africa in 1969 and arrived in Barbados. There's much evidence that supports the theories that Kemetic and ancient African trade existed. And here's some of the, I don't know if they still have that Olmec head here. They have a replica here somewhere in San Antonio, down here, downtown. And I remember seeing that. To kind of give you an idea of the conspiracy against this information getting out, the historians who had earlier proposed the notion that Africans stayed in Africa and never went anywhere, didn't have this travel. They said, well, this is really not an African. The reason his nose is flat and the reason his lips are like that is because this boulder, I don't know how many tons it is, but we know for sure that the wind blew it over on his face and it made his nose flat and his lips big. Like I said, there is a considerable conspiracy. Mandingo head, 14th century Mexico. Also, the reason they know that the Mandingos were in Mexico is because they found graveyards with Africans in them. And in those graveyards that date back past the 14th century, we have the Mandingo spirit tips, the exact same ones that are in Africa. And here's some more of the African strongholds found in the heartland of Mexico. And this is how they came. Worldwide winds, currents, emphasizing the Atlantic drift routes from Africa to America. And basically this is how they came. They left the west coast of Africa, got into the currents, and they came right on over to what is now the Americas and the Caribbeans and so on and so forth. They leaped from West Africa and go. Christopher Columbus left here. Came in 1492. Well, the reason that's so significant, 1492 is when the Moors were kicked out of Spain. The Moors are the only ones, and the reason this is so important to him is because the Moors are the ones who had the map to get over here. So he followed the Moor. They went to the Canary Islands, and they left from the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa because at the time that's the only place the Moors knew how to get here. So they left there and came on over to America. John G. Jackson wrote the classic book, The Introduction to African Civilization, and the mega classic, Man, God, and Civilization. If you really want to stretch your brain around something significant, try that book. That is not an easy read, but it is well Dr. Chancellor Williams wrote the classic book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. He is really the one who most of us read first in terms of pulling up this information, compiling this information. Unfortunately, he died penniless and broke, and he's helped countless of us. And what's really unfortunate about it is that if he were any other color, studied any other history, he would have died a very, very wealthy man, and renowned. The Ankh. We're getting into the ancient African history. We're going to show you how it connects all over the continent. Africa and Egypt was called Kemet by the ancient people who developed and ruled the region for thousands of years. Africa was also called Petrusi or Alkebulan. Not even black humans today know that their black ancestors were the builders of pyramids, temples, and knowledge that is the foundation of human civilization as we know it today. There was no distinction between Africa and Kemet as far as they were concerned. This is Kemet now. You can see the grand pyramids in the background and, of course, modern day society. Pyramids as they are now, I say. And I often wonder if people sitting here, vacationing, understand what all it took, the 38,000 years of civilization that came before them that gave rise to this magnificent monument. The pyramids of Giza. Historians erroneously attempt to establish the origins of this grand civilization without studying continental African spirituality and religiosity. Very little is written about Kemet's spiritual connection to other African religious systems such as the Yoruba, Zulu, the Dogon, the Wolof, and the Asante, to name a few. The whole of Africa was on one accord, spiritually, in ancient times. If you spend your time in ancient Kemet trying to figure out where they came from or who they were, and you don't approach it from a spiritual context, you will never understand the Egyptian people or the ancient Kemetic or ancient African people. They were first and foremost very spiritual, and we're going to get into more of that as we go. The mighty Nile River, highway to civilization. Follow the Nile upward, and you will find the roots of the Commission civilization. Now, we say upward. As far as we're concerned, this is Kemet. This is the Mediterranean Sea. To us, this is up. To them, up was going into the interior of Africa. The world is literally turned upside down as far as we're concerned. They came from this area and followed over the course of 38,000 years plus and made their way up. And another point I want to make here in Sudan, which used to be Nubia, there are over 223 pyramids. So if you want to know why we have pyramids, how they were built, you have to go into the interior of Africa to understand that. Ormaket, the Rule on the Horizon, one of my favorite characters. Some estimate that it's over 12,000 years old. When I used to read that, before I discovered the 38,778 notion, when I used to read that, I used to think 12,000 years, because all the literature is talking in terms of 6,000 years, 5,000 years, 3,000 years. And I just couldn't figure out where the heck they got 12,000 years from. But the more you study it, the further back you go, the more impressed you become with how old the world really is. And we'll talk more about Ormaket. Again, this notion that the Egyptians were not black. This comes from the tomb of Ramses III. The first A figure shows the Commission or the Egyptian is a self-portrait. The second one is B, the Indo-European, how they saw the Indo-European. And then, of course, C, blacks from the interior of Nubia. D is the Semite. You can see the only difference between how they saw themselves and how they saw other Africans in Africa is the profile. Bigger lips, a little wider nose. Here you have somebody that looks more like my wife. And trust me, she's black. Dr. Yosef Ben Jokanan. He's also called Yakanan. He's a Falasha Jew from Ethiopia and fiercely proud to be. He wrote the classic book, The Black Man on the Nile. If you want to get on YouTube and look some of these people up, you're more than welcome. My information is on the sheets that are passed out, handed out to you, and you'll get a chance to go check out my website and then get some of the names of some of the people that we're talking about, and check them out on Google him or check him out on YouTube. He has, and the reason I mention that because this brother has a debate on there that is second to none. He's really awesome. One of my favorites, Shea Anta Diop. In this country we call him Diop, but he's actually Diop, renowned as a modern day Pharaoh, or as we used to say, Ra. Dr. Diop taught at Dhaka University. He was first to prove that commissions were black Africans from the interior of Africa. Wrote the must-read book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization and Civilization or Barbarism. And the way he proved it conclusively, beyond going to the 1975 conference at UNESCO, he also developed a melanin dosage test where he cut skin off the mummies, took that skin and tested it for its melanin content, and it proved that they had just every bit as much melanin as he had in his own skin. The Rosetta Stone, deciphered in 1822 BCE by the French. I say deciphered, it was really discovered in 1799. It took them that long to decipher. The reason this, and it's not any bigger than the tomb that you find on a tombstone. It's a very small piece of work, but it actually unlocks the doors. This society failed, and nobody had access to who they were, other than the fact that they were from black people who seemed to have connections to outer space, who seemed to build buildings that nobody else could build. Nobody really understood who they were or how they were. Well, what happened is that when they deciphered this stone, they were able to read the tombs, and that literally changed the world for all of us. Now, the way they did it was this is Greek language. This is demonic, and the reason they were able to, by the way, demonic is an Egyptian, a modern day Egyptian, relatively modern, it goes back 1,000 years or so, language. They understood this language and they understood this language. They did not understand this. This was ancient Kemet, or what they now call hieroglyphs. Our ancestors call it Medu, Medu meaning words, Neter meaning God, words from God. And so they read this and found that this was saying the exact same thing as this, so they deduced quite brilliantly after 25 years almost that this might be saying the same thing, and they were able to figure out the alphabet of the Mennonite. This was a language that was read only by the priests in Africa. Not people on the street did not know how to read that, didn't know how to speak it, and it was a secret that was a secret up until the time, really. Now, the word Ngu means king. So instead of saying King Khufu, I put Ngu Khufu, 4th dynasty builder of the Great Pyramid. Now, I also put a quote from Thomas Jefferson on here. This information, let me go back. These photos of these black people were being dug up in the 17 and 1800s. So there was no doubt in anybody's mind who the Egyptians really were. There was no doubt they were black people with nappy hair. If you read Herodotus from Greece, he would tell you over and over and over that I went to Egypt, I watched there, I studied there, and I'm telling you they had nappy hair. So, and they were dark-skinned people. They were just like the Ethiopians, is what he said. So they still tried to hide this information. And this is the key point as far as I'm concerned. Thomas Jefferson, in 1781 said, and this is a quote from him, and in imagination, talking about blacks, they are dull, tasteless, and anomalous. It would be unfair to follow them to Africa for this investigation. They knew, at the same time they were writing this information, they knew this existed. You know, the only thing I can draw a conclusion or draw a similarity today is that somebody knew there were no weapons of mass destruction, but they put out a propaganda campaign to convince us that it was, so that they could do what? Go pick up some oil fields. The same thing happened then. Slavery was in full force, making this country a lot of money, and it was tax-free money. So they had to continue that. Blacks got here not in 1619. We were here as early as 1570, 75. So all those years we spent together, black and white, and Native American working together. Well, not maybe so much the Native American at that time. All they did help out. Those three groups of human beings were together for almost 50 years before the Africans came, as 20 of them came in Jamestown in 1619. And from there, they spent about 200 years of a propaganda campaign to convince regular white folk that there is something inherently, innately wrong with black people, so that the wealthy people could continue the process of slavery. They did a very good job. Khafre, builder of the second pyramid. Now, is there any doubt what he looks like? Is there any doubt that if you walked on the east side, you'd find this brother playing basketball somewhere? Benjamin Rush, the father of American psychiatry. At the same time, they're pulling this image up. He's writing. He believed that being black was a hereditary illness, which he referred to as Negroism. This is a campaign against the truth, so that wealthy people could continue getting wealthy. Menkaure, builder of the smallest pyramid, the smallest of the three, rather. Now this is my favorite. In 1851, Samuel A. Cartwright, prominent Louisiana physician, published an essay entitled "Report on the Diseases and Physical Peculiarities of the Negro Race." And this word, dropides, is what he calls it. Cartwright claimed that disease, dropides, caused blacks to have an uncontrollable urge to run away from their masters. That's incredible. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, that's incredible. But it shows you that the reason they had to make statements like that is because this information was being swept away. Ngu Joseph, king of the third dynasty, initiator of the step pyramid. And I put that on there. We see pictures of the step pyramid, but very few of us know how big it is. That's pretty good size step pyramid. And I decided to put a profile of the brother in there. That's a vast relief of Joseph, just so you can actually see his nose. And his lips a little better. You know, there's no doubt. If you go out here to the Spurs or the UTSA basketball team, you see brothers who look like this. Imhotep, the builder of the third pyramid, the architect of the step pyramid, inventor of the art of building with hewn stone. Changed the way building was made forever. He was described as the world's first multi-genius, a priest. He was also an author, architect, astronomer, philosopher, a physician, and poet. Imhotep coined the phrase, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we shall die." Now let me explain that a little bit. His concept of death was not the same concept that we have. They believed in reincarnation. So they believed that you should have the proper attitude while you're alive, because when you die, you're going to go meet the Maker. And if you get it right, you don't have to come back to this place. So he said, eat, drink, and be merry. I don't mean eat anything, drink anything, and do anything. Most people see that, and they assume that that's what that means. But it actually means live your life right, live your life well, do well, be well, eat smart. You bring goodness, I bring goodness. Together we bring goodness, and we won't have to come back. Norma, I put this on there because he has, I like to wear these shawak. These are kufis, we call them kufi for short, but they're also called shawak kufis. I wear them, and I also put him on there because he looks like a guy who's played basketball with in high school. Norma, he's also called Aha, first historic king, or Ngu. He created the dynastic system, and he was from Nefer, which is now Memphis. This is a head of Ngu Jaffe. I just put him on there again, once again, to show. And I want you to look at these faces, and I want you to juxtapose that image with the notion that there is something inherently dumb about black people, inferior about black people. We have black people today across the world, all over the world, who do not know who they are, and they're spending every bit of their time trying to prove that they're smart. If they only knew who they were, there's nothing to be proved, and we can get on with the business of being human. That's really what this is all about. This is freeing our minds so that we can move on. And this is just an unidentified brother that I just want to put in there to kind of show you. Once again, this was no accident. Over and over and over again, we see the conspiracy to hide what was before the world. And Hussein Wasset, the first. Now, what's significant about him, in addition to going to Somalia, he's also given credit with going to Athens, Greece, and showing the Greeks how to build their first civilization. And if you want to know what a modern-day Somalian looks like, we have some here. This is the model Imam from the land of the Kemetic ancestors, Somalia. This picture here is, you know, the Michael Jackson video, Remember the Time. And then you have very defiantly in a magazine cover, you know, declaring, I am African. Professor George G.M. James was author of Stolen Legacy. If you want to find out more information about this brother here, go research Stolen Legacy, because he talks a lot about the Greek connection to ancient Africa and how they came and learned at the feet of these people who have been around civilizing themselves for 38,000 years. It means they're superior to bodies. It means they were around longer and had more time to cultivate it. Now this is one of my favorite people. Hatshepsut. So they called her a warrior queen, but she was actually a king. She lived her life as if she were a king. She reigned for 21 years during the 25th dynasty. She erected a lot of monuments in her name over the course of her reign. Now, to show you that there was the same drama going on there, and I'm not going to paint a picture of these black people as being holier than thou. We had our drama and craziness going on there as well, because as soon as she died, this brother took all her temples down. I guess he was showing this pig, I don't know. Yeah. He probably showed this. He was great in his own right in other areas, but he had a problem with the female queen who came before him, apparently. This is Thutmose. He was, you know how, right now, I can give you an idea of how things were then. There were a lot of people, as they are coming into America all the time, there are people who wish to come in and out of America. There are those of us who say keep them out. There are those of us who say let them in. The same question was there in Kenya. People were trying to come from Greece. People were trying to come from Europe. People were trying to come from the so-called Middle East, so on and so forth. And there was always this question before everybody's notion was, what do we do with all these people that are coming in? He believed that the best way to stop these people from coming in was to go invade their lands and stop them on their own turf. The way George Bush believed that the way to get terrorists is to go over there and get them, not let them come over here. So it's the same kind of mindset, human. You know, I want you to walk away from this thing understanding that we were great, but we were also human. Amenhotep, born poor, rose to great heights as a high priest. The reason I put that in there is because this society was one in which poor people could rise from obscurity, poor neighborhoods, the wrong side of the tracks, wrong neighborhood, and rise to great heights. It is said that never happened in society until America came about. That's simply not true. Molekete Asante, father of Afrocentricity. Whenever you hear the word African-centered or African-centricity or Afrocentricity, you can thank him for that. He coined the phrase African-centered thought or Afrocentricity. You know, his book, Afrocentricity and Knowledge, is another mind-bending book. I highly recommend you read that if you want to stretch your mind around something grand and old. He was a PhD by the time he was 26. Lots of great matter on this brother. This is Ngu Amenhotep. At the time, he was popular for being a kind and generous and smart king. But now we know him as King Tut's daddy. King Tut's mama. This is Queen T, wife of Ngu Amenhotep III, mother of Ngu Tut, and extremely influential in all government and spiritual affairs. Now, we talked about Hatshepsut earlier. She was actually formally in place. This woman here was not. She was a queen, but she ruled as if she were a king, because after her husband died, she had a son. And this famous son, Akhenaten. She helped him rule the dynasty. The reason she had to help him is because he was more concerned with spiritual matters, really wasn't concerned at all with running the state's affairs. You know, he is ascribed as the first Egyptian or the first African who believed in one God, which is not true. They believe their concept of God was that there are many attributes to God. So our English language is really what stops us from understanding them as a people and who they were. Because God may have many attributes, so they would ascribe a lion as a God, but not a God to be worshipped, but an attribute of the main God, or the real God, of Ra. Akhenaten, kind of give you an idea, he would be a flower child if he were around today. Sandals and all. He didn't pay any attention to the state of affairs. So there were people in the military complex who wanted him dead. He died mysteriously. Don't know how that happened, but he did die mysteriously. Didn't reign for very long at all. But he was primarily known for in that country, he was known as the founder of the Aton spiritual system. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But let me go back here real quick. The reason we know he was not disconnected from his past spiritually is because he's standing there with the crook and the flail. The crook represented somebody who met somebody who was a shepherd. A shepherd was the highest order of the day, which means that you followed and you led the Creator. And the flail simply means that it symbolized somebody who had overcome their lower half of their base nature, and they were spiritual gods on earth in terms of they lived as if they thought they were God. So if I give you an example, if I said I'm a God man on earth, that doesn't mean that I'm God. It means that I remind myself to behave as if God is indwelling within me. And trust me, it makes you check yourself. Nefertiti. This is not Nefertiti. This is Nefertiti. This is what they left on the walls. This lady here is from Berlin. The Germans got this. They found this in the tomb. And they assumed, because they were looking for somebody who looked most white, once again, that conspiracy was afoot here. And they got this tomb and brought it out. She was probably a second or third wife of Akhenaten in the tomb with all the other ones, but this is the real Nefertiti. People think that, well, the question I used to get all the time is, well, how come the Egyptians had long hair? No, they had wigs. They did not have, all of them have long flowing hair the way it looks on the picture. If you look at the paintings and the bas reliefs and the things on the wall, the paintings and pictures on the wall, you will see that there are actually braids that they have. And the reason they had braids is because they wore wigs for braids. Men did too, by the way. This is King Tut, died from below the head. He really didn't do anything, didn't get a chance to do anything. His brother Akhenaten died early because he was a flower child. And so they killed him at age 19, quite early. He never got a chance to get out of the... Now this is Creator Kwanzaa. I'm putting, once again, historians and people in this presentation. He wrote the tremendous book, Introduction to Black Studies. He covers everything from spirituality, and he covers the whole of Africa. He connects Africa from top to bottom in a way that few people have. Very powerful brother out of California. And I put this in there. This is a drawing that we came up with to show you the words. And we talked about 38,778. So when you put that picture in mind, it should not surprise you that they studied medical science. These words that you see are commissioned words showing that they had indeed studied all of the different limbs and the anatomy of the body. Skeletal, same thing. Internal organs as well. Tremendous thing. We think that medical science is something relatively new. That information was hidden along with the information that these were black people who had it. So we all suffered. Black, white, Latino, we all suffered when they decided to hide this information from the world. We'd probably be in the Star Trek movies right now. It wouldn't be a movie, it'd be real life stuff. Worldwide African historian Ramoko Rashidi He has a place here in San Antonio. I don't think he's here that much. He's traveling quite a bit. But this guy travels the world and he finds bits and pieces of African history all over the world. He is a dynamic man, a tremendously gifted and bright man. Also, G. Hilliard, historian, author of the Teachings of Thahotep, the oldest book in the world. Hilliard passed away in the summer of 2007 while teaching in Kemet. He would get groups and take them back to Africa. He left Western Africa, he left Ghana, traveled up to Kemet, and contracted malaria somewhere along the way and passed. He will be sorely missed. Nice man, by the way. Now we're getting into the spiritual system. Asar, they changed his name later to Osiris. He was, now listen very carefully to how this shapes out. A symbolic God-man who was crucified, resurrected from death, and reigned eternally in heaven. It could be said that Kemet was a land of Osirians or Naturians, much in the way that America is considered essentially a Christian nation, or Saudi Arabia, a Muslim nation today. Now, by the way, this is a personification. This is not a real person. He never existed. But once again, it is a story, a fable, a myth that Africans came up with to explain life. And the story of him and his wife and son reads pretty much like the Lion King. I think we've all seen the Lion King. He would be Mufasa. There's little Simba sitting on his mother's lap. The reason this is so critical to us is that it explains the early birth of many so-called, many of the religions and spiritual systems that we see today. Aset was his wife's name. His name was Asar. His wife's name was Aset. They changed her name to Isis. His son's name was Heru. They changed his name to Horus. They were the original Black Madonna. And I'm going to explain some things to you. This young man here grew up and found out that his uncle, Seth, the brother of his daddy, killed his daddy, chopped his body up into 14 pieces, or 28 pieces, depending on which one of the myths you want to buy into, and scattered him all over. His mother, beset with grief, looked him up, found all the pieces of his body, and put him back together again. Now keep in mind, this is a myth. He fought a pitched battle with his uncle Seth, the way Simba fought Scar, if you remember the Lion King. What he learned during this fight is that Seth loved to fight. The more he fought Seth, the more Seth would fight. The more he fought Seth, the more Seth would fight. It's kind of like wrestling in the mud with a pig. The pig loved the mud. So what he learned, what he had finally decided to do is that he did what Simba did. Remember, Simba had a conversation with his uncle Rafiki, and his Rafiki told him how to get back home. Well, Heru had a conversation with his Uncle Tahuti. Uncle Tahuti was known as the wisest man on earth. Uncle Tahuti taught him how to deal with Seth. And his instructions were, you cannot beat Seth with your fist. You must fight Seth with your heart. You must overcome your own weaknesses in order to overcome the weaknesses of Seth. This was the whole message. This is what the story was about. It's about a young man, Heru, growing up, half spiritual, half grounded on earth, trying to figure out how to overcome his own weaknesses. And this story, this allegory, this myth is designed to explain that whole process. What he ended up doing is he didn't listen to his uncle until Uncle Seth gouged out his eye. And when he lost his eye, we came across with the myth of the eye of Heru. And basically what that means is that by losing his sight, he gained insight. And he realized that what was really going on in the world was spiritual. And he went back, after he got his insight, he went back and stopped fighting his Uncle Seth in that same manner and overcame Seth in the course of laws. So this whole story about about Asar, Aset, Heru, and Set. And by the way, some people believe that Set is the early word for Satan because he was a rotten boy. After he understood, after he lost his eye, he was full of wisdom, insight, understanding, and he had the ability to see what was unseen. Go back, please go back. I'll give you time. After this is over, I'll get with you. Trust me. Continue taking notes. That's a good thing, brother. You go make the rate. The reason I put this on here, and we're running short on time here. These are not human beings. He is, and she was Aset. This is the wife of Heru. The reason she's standing next to this king is because Heru is the one who did what? I mean, Aset is the one who did what? She found the pieces of her husband's body and put them back together again. Mythically, what that means spiritually is that the journey is supposed to be, we're born into this world not knowing of our divine nature. And when she put him back together again, that symbolizes him, the old man, finding his divine nature. And then he reigned in heaven. She reigned on earth. She became an assistant of everybody on earth who's seeking to do what? Find their divine heritage. So here this brother is standing next to her, and it symbolizes that he is seeking or has found his divine heritage. In other words, he has overcome his lower nature. And he has been nurtured along the way, because this is Aset's sister, Heru. She used to be married to Set, but after he continued to be a no good brother, she dropped him and went and helped her brother, helped her sister resurrect her husband. So this means that he has been nurtured. He is a nurturing brother, and he has put himself back together again. That's what this means. A lot of people see that and go, "Man, brother got two women." Not true. The Ankh, or the Om, we're almost through here, folks. Om was the ancient Kemetic symbol for life. I have one around my neck. It is a hekau, or mantra, and it is a progenitor to the mantra Om. You hear people who practice Buddhists and so on and so forth. And well, that word came from the ancient word Om. It doesn't mean anything. It is simply a hekau. Hekau is a word that they say that the Creator, they believe that the Creator used sound to create the world. So sound is very important. So it gave them the feeling that this word settled things down so that they could find their spiritual self in a mixed up, confusing world. Hormagat, Heru on the horizon, carved from a single rock. It is also said to be the oldest solar temple ever built. With the head of a man and the lower body of a reposed lion, spiritually it represents a man overcoming his lower or base nature. Put another way, humans must seek to control their lower nature in order to attain true spiritual understanding. Once again, a constant theme throughout Africa was finding a way to overcome your lower or base nature. That's what the whole program was about, is becoming spiritually in tune with yourself and finding that energy within you that is good. And by the way, Heru, this Sphinx was Heru. So we're talking about, remember baby Simba? That's who the Sphinx was. They were trying to figure out, they've been trying to forever figure out what it was, but if you familiarize yourself with the mythology and the understanding of the spirituality of the people, all of this stuff makes more sense. And I could go on, I could do a whole lecture just on this one atom alone. Connecting all religions. There are some bits and pieces and fragments of every religion on earth that in some way or another came from Kemet. This is an interesting thing here. This picture here is graffiti. It came from the catacombs of Rome. We all know that the Christians who followed Jesus were put to death. They were fed to the lions and so on and so forth. These were built, this was painted by the people who were awaiting death. So if you go to Rome today and go in the catacombs, go down in the catacombs, this is what you will find. For graffiti, pictures left behind of the people who worship Yeshua. This is an early depiction of the Buddha. This is Shea Hunter, this is a tremendous man who wrote, they say, almost between 1 and 2 tons of information. His name is Shea Bamba Shimtuba from West Africa.
Question, who is Yeshua?
Yeshua is the Hebrew name of Jesus Christ.
Hebrew name of Jesus. Like you said.
Modern day commissioned priest. We want to know where I got this spiritual information from. This is Ra Nefer Amin Sheker or Shechem from the Asar Asset Society in Brooklyn, New York. He wrote 2 tremendous books called the Meditation. Once again, Words from God, Volumes 1 and Volumes 2. If you really want to go deep, I mean deep, this brother will take you back to the cosmos. It is unreal, the level of his information. In fact, I know a lot of African historians who know African history backwards and forwards, and they'll read this guy's work and get a headache. I actually heard that from one of the historians. Because if you're not spiritual, this information will just drive you crazy. But if you're seeking understanding, spiritual understanding, this information will make more sense to you. He is a tremendous man. And I follow him. I also follow this brother here, commissioned Smaikawi priest. Smaikawi is the ancient Egyptian word for yoga. 38,778. If you want to go to the origins of yoga, go to the temples in ancient Kemet and you will find on the walls yoga poses. This is Sabaya, which means priest. Mawada Ashley practiced Smaikawi, positioned as observed on the temples of the Mid-Atlantic or the hieroglyphics. He practices in Miami, Florida. I'm also a follower of his. Tremendous man, extremely nice man. And him, when you look into their eyes, they will take you home. They are some tremendous guys. I highly recommend you guys check them out on the website. Now, we're coming to a close here. The Middle Passage. Africans spent 3 months aboard slave death ships like this one. Here we began the process of being transformed from African to Negro. The reason I put this on here is that I want to emphasize the people on this boat here, those of us who are African do not like to admit it, but they are on this boat primarily because we put each other on that boat. One tribe sold another tribe. One tribe fought another tribe. We fought each other. Humans began in Africa thousands of years ago. They say that 80,000 years ago humans started to leave Africa. And the reason they left Africa because humans didn't get along then. We don't really get along now, do we? This is an example, this is an extension of that, of how one tribe really didn't know what they were doing. I'm not saying they understood the full extent of what was going to happen to us here, but I'm saying that they did not get along. And as a result of that, they sold one another into hell on earth. Until we change this, until that is changed, nothing on this earth will be right. Because the oldest people on earth must find themselves so that we can help the rest of the people on earth as well. We started out as the oldest, now we're the oldest on the bottom, looking up at everyone else, trying to figure out, trying to find our place. My message here today is that those of you who are African of African descent, go home, study, look inside of yourself. And those of you who are not of African descent, guess what? You really are. There's only 2 kinds of humans on earth. There are far Africans and near Africans. A far African is, a near African is somebody like me, black skin, nappy hair, big nose, big lips. I know I'm from Africa. A far African is everybody else on earth. It doesn't matter what country you come from. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter whether you're from Spain or England. It doesn't matter. Your ancestors came from Africa. There really is no such thing as race. That is a misnomer. This is one of my favorite passages. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about speaking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are born to make manifest the glory of God within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. This is from Mary William. And a lot of people think that this came from Nelson Mandela, but it actually came from her. And once again, connecting the dots of humanity, DNA research conclusively proves that we are all one family, the human family. And now there's the research. You can go down and take a test and find out exactly what part of Africa you came from. No matter what color you are, you can go down and find out. And then this is a shameless plug of my first book, The Unshackled Mind. A lot of the information you'll see is in this book. It's not organized as well as there are many other books, but it's actually a portal to my world, a portal to the African-centered world. There were many, many books that I read, some of them positive, some of them negative. But I never saw anybody put together a book that was a motivational book for black youth. I wrote a book that I wish I would have read when I was in the 8th or 9th or 10th grade. Would have changed my life. And it's written in a positive manner. It brings together Malcolm X and Dr. King. And I happen to believe that those of us who are African, when we combine those two great minds, we will be all right. We will transform ourselves and we will help this world, because this world surely needs help. Here are my sources. If you want to find out more about what took place, you can actually go to my website. You can call me. You have information before you. If you'd like to have me come out and speak before your organization or group, I'd be very glad to do so. On behalf of Derek and Smokey, Smokey Johnson is also a member of the Motor Circle. He's not here. He's in Atlanta with his fiancée. He'll be back. We're going to try to continue these lectures as the year goes on. We're not restricted to February. So, without further ado, I don't know if we have time for questions or sessions or not, but please, thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'm here to take them in there. Thank you.